Today I've got something a little different and special for you. John Chambers, a dear friend and mentor, is the Chairman Emeritus of Cisco Systems. While John was CEO of Cisco, Cisco became the most highly capitalized company in the world. It is one of the most successful networking companies to this day, and over decades it has essentially built the internet. It has shaped the connectivity that drives the world today. John is also a tremendous business person. He's got amazing acumen, amazing foresight, and he's one of the best leaders when it comes to navigating great shifts in the marketplace, seeing them early, spotting them early, and then adjusting strategy, adjusting tactics to meet these shifts and transform them into benefits for himself and for his company. Now, I'm lucky enough to call John a friend, and I spent some time with him at his home in California recently. We spoke about artificial intelligence. We spoke about the coming shifts. We spoke about how the tech environment in the country and globally is changing. And we spoke about threats and opportunities. So I'd like to invite you to join John and me as we speak about all of these things.
Hello, I'm John Chambers, and we're together with one of my great friends, Amir from the CEO of Spark Cognition. Amir, it's a pleasure to be together today.
Good to be with you, John.
We're experimenting. We're looking at first doing this for the JC2 portfolio of 20 companies, sharing best practices, learning from each other. We're also going to consider putting this out just for general availability. Our goal is really to educate others on strategy, vision. How do you take a vision and implement it to get around market transitions?
Right.
Some of the lessons learned, perhaps what we've both done different in our careers. You are truly an expert in AI. And while we've been saying you for 9 years and me for 6 years, it would be the next frontier and as big as the internet and as big as cloud. Now people are realizing that it is. So we're going to share some information there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll kind of tie it together in terms of my role as a VC, not as a typical VC, but more of a strategic partner, coach. And you can be very direct in terms of what you think about what works and what does not. And the fact that you've got a review and your pay raise coming up in another month or two should have nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it, exactly.
But anyway, thank you for being here today.
No, absolutely. It's a great pleasure, John, as always.
So if you think about it, Amir's done this for 9 years, and he got industrial AI in a very, very unique way. He also has written books on AI and the direction, graduate and so many degrees I can't keep up from University of Texas and Balance, and you've got over 20 patents last time I looked on it. So let's jump right in, and the way we're going to try this, and it's an experiment, is for you to ask a set of questions first, and anything's fair game. Then we'll reverse it based on what you covered, and I'll ask you a set of questions. Sure. If it'd be all right.
Absolutely. So John, now is a time of great change, particularly with all these technology shifts, with generative AI and artificial intelligence really coming to the fore. One of the things I've learned from you is how to identify a market transition. In fact, in your coaching and mentoring to me, you've always said you got to get those shifts right. And you got the internet right, you've got other market transitions right. What is it about this transition that you feel is monumental, that will change things, and how will it?
So when I look at a market transition, I look at a business model transition enabled by new technology. And they go hand in hand. To your point, the internet, it changed the entire way you work, live, learn, and play. It changed companies like Amazon in terms of how they go to market. And then there was the cloud. And Amazon, again, was in very much of a leadership there as an example. Now it is AI. And while you and I have been saying it for quite a while, it wasn't until the last 6 months that it crossed the chasm and people grasped the huge changes they're going to go in this marketplace. I think it will be bigger than the 2 prior generations combined. And it's, as always, I go to my customers, and they're the ones that say, here's the business model change, here's how fast it's occurring, etc. So I think it is here and now, moving with tremendous speed. And if I were betting on 2 areas, I'd bet on AI and cybersecurity for the future in terms of advising a young person what to get their expertise on, or a startup where they ought to be betting.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the challenges in navigating these transitions, John, is just that you've got an organization, you've got a team to carry along with you.
Mhm.
And I think a leader communicating these shifts effectively makes all the difference in the organization ultimately executing on that vision.
Yes.
So in terms of vision and communication, that's one of your strongest, capabilities and
Mhm.
attributes as a CEO. What did you do at Cisco and at other places that allowed you to be such an effective communicator, particularly when it came to talking about these shifts?
It's a great question, and candidly, I learned it from other leaders as well. Much like we're sharing views and learning from each other. Jack Welch was in the generation before me in terms of great leaders, and Jack was amazingly good, built amazing operations, financial returns. Many people consider the best CEO in the world of his generation, but he wasn't a particularly good communicator.
Yeah.
And nor did he need to be. He was effective in getting the results he wanted and expectations. But that market changed with speed of change with the internet and now cloud and now AI. Your ability to communicate what is your vision, what is your strategy, what are the elements of it, and then to drive it through your own organization, your leadership team, get pieces assigned to it, your employees, but also to your customers, to your partners, and to your investors. So communications has moved from a nice to do or a good to do to something I encourage all the CEOs, yourself included, to practice regularly. And the better you get at communications, challenging the group, the more you ought to actually practice. People tend to, without realizing it, become a little bit stale and don't focus on it as much. So key leaderships that I expect out of the CEOs, a clear vision and mission strategy where you're going to take your company, a clear understanding of the leadership team to implement that, and a clear communications of all the above in terms of the approach. So communication's key.
Yeah. I remember a few years ago, you were in Austin with us and you did an all hands with the team.
Yes.
And one of the things that you said, which I'll never forget, you talked about the importance of culture.
Yes.
And you helped us actually put together the core tenets of our own culture. Two things in particular. One, you said culture isn't just what you want it to be in terms of the positive attributes, but you've also got to say what it isn't in your case, in your organization. So it's both the things you want and the things you don't want. And that was very helpful for us.
Yes.
Another thing you said was that, look, culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Yes. That's from somebody else.
Yeah.
That was from an individual who's the CEO of Ford, if I remember right. But yes, it does. And Warren Buffett said that as well.
Yeah. So maybe elaborate on that a little bit for the team and for the folks listening. What do you mean by that?
Well, out of all the things, Amir, that we cover with our startups, usually the hardest one, especially for the younger CEOs, you got it pretty quickly. But most of them get vision and strategy. They get the management team. They get the focus on the customer. But they have a challenge with why is culture so important, or everybody understands the culture. I don't need to articulate it and walk it. Yet culture should be the way that you implement your strategy. If your culture is defined right, it makes it very easy for almost every decision what you should do in terms of the direction. At Cisco, our voluntary attrition was about 5% for the 20 years I was there in an industry that averaged 15 plus. And out of our acquired companies, talk about culture, we never acquired anybody who didn't have a similar culture. And our attrition rate was 4% voluntary out of the acquired companies, in a industry that acquired companies run 20%. So not only is it a way of keeping your best people, it's the way of responding to challenges, directions, etc. And part of a culture is to have a healthy paranoia, as Andy Grove would say, or as I would say, never waste a crisis. If you haven't got one, create one. The good news is we've got one going on in the market today. And that's where leadership based on a culture is when you break away. So while there's going to be a lot of breakage in the industry, both from VCs, from startups, from unicorns, many will become just normal horses on it. This is also where the next generation of great companies will occur, but culture will be a key element in making that happen.
Well, and that shift that you're talking about, this unicorn to regular horses, the market, has its motions, and clearly things have changed in the last year quite a bit. What should leaders be doing? What should your startup leaders and entrepreneurs in general be doing to navigate this particular shift?
Well, I think it's always important to realize what is different in this one versus what we've seen before.
Yeah.
I think we all understand the speed of change
Mhm.
is probably, we used to say internet years, 3 times normal years. AI years, it's at least 3 to 5 times the internet speed
Yeah.
in terms of the direction. The second is, and just being very transparent, the current generation of leaders, it's been great for 12 years
Mhm.
and free cash.
Mhm.
And we often get confused with our ability to lead with we were in the right market at the right time, and the
Right.
cost of capital was almost zero.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was easy to buy growth. The transition that the companies now have to do is we have to focus much more on profitable growth.
Yes.
And when you talk to both the leaders, but even people recruiting to these companies, they're going to want to know what is your path to profitability, free cash flow. They want to know what your productivity per employee is. Is it $360,000 per employee, or is it 160,000? Huge difference in terms of stability. And I think all of us have to operate with a different sense of urgency.
Yes.
When there's growth like we've had for the last over the decade, we actually don't quite have as much urgency as we did before. You don't want to ever waste a crisis, but we need to operate with a sense of urgency that is almost like controlled panic.
Yeah.
That urgency is often missing in many companies. Now, having said that, we've been very fortunate with you and your peers. I know that you don't publicly say what your number is, but let's assume it's growing well over 50%.
Yes. Yeah.
And in a market where many of the security companies, even though it's been growth, have slowed dramatically, and I think the majority of them have slowed below 25% growth last time I looked. We have ours growing between 50 and 200%. On AI, it is the next frontier, and we see similar growth in the 50 to 100%, very much where you are today with our key AI companies. And almost all of our 20 companies are a combination of either AI and security in terms of its implementation.
Yeah. No, that's been a really impressive portfolio and a really impressive group of companies, even for us to learn from and work with. So, again, I think, John, one of the areas that I look at when I see artificial intelligence and generative AI, et cetera, is a big reshaping of how startups and companies will have to go about their business now.
So one of the things I want to do is allow me to kind of, if you don't mind, learn from you now.
Please.
You have an ability to take complex topics and make them easy to understand. Kind of define what we're doing with generative AI, GPT, chat GPT, industrial AI. What categories are, and how would you explain it to the users today who are both startups, but also VCs, et cetera?
Sure. So, we've had this great explosion with deep learning over the last 10 or so years.
Yes.
And deep learning is an area within machine learning. And one particular type of deep learning system tends to be very good at not just recognizing things like a cat or a dog, but also generating text, generating images. And it does so by predicting essentially the next element in a sequence. So, for example, when it comes to creating a sentence, that next element is a word. When it comes to creating a picture, like with Midjourney and DALL-E and all these models, it's about predicting the next pixel. So these systems have gotten really, really good at being trained at large combinations of text and images and so on. And what they're learning is not just this is a cat and a dog, but this is a style. This is what the rules of grammar are. This is what a particular writer's style is. And when they do these sentence completions, they do them in a way that's quite intelligent by using a technology called word embedding, meaning the relationships of words amongst themselves, thousands of words amongst themselves, which allow the rules of grammar and logic to kind of emerge in the network. So the amazing thing about generative AI now is twofold. One, as a productivity enhancer for all our knowledge workers, meaning that it can really accelerate your workflows in a big way. The other thing is that it's not just limited to text. ChatGPT, yes, we interact with it in the form of text, but the general capability is one of predicting the next sequence in anything, the next token in any sequence. So it could be the next action, which once that is embodied, it could really mean a lot for robotics. because the next action that a robot needs to take, if it's a logical, proper action, that means the robot will become more capable.
Yes.
We're seeing this with images. So this is going to be not just one application or one class of applications. This is truly a kind of a platform, lower level technology that will make its way into everything. So I feel generative AI is, first of all, it's remarkable how well it works. And second of all, it's remarkable how relevant it is to almost any area where human intelligence is at a premium.
So within that, how is industrial AI different? Because in my simple terms, I think about AI to execute, you got to have compute.
Yes.
You've got to have data.
Yes.
And you got to have the logarithms to do the learning off the data. In a world where you're drawing everything off the quote, the internet,
Yes.
You can have a big blender that mashes all this together and responds with a paper for your school or a recipe that you want to do. But in industry, companies are not going to share their data.
Correct.
They're going to want to be able to do this training off of that. How do you approach it with the large industrials, whether it's a major oil company or a major defense industry company, or the defense industry itself for our country?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things here. First of all, the underlying algorithms and the technology for, let's say, a GPT class system is going to be the same. The question is, what do you train it on? What data do you bring into it?
Yes.
Yes, you can scrape the internet for images and get pictures off of Facebook and build a Mid-Journey like system. Or you can take all the text off of Wikipedia and numerous other publications and do a ChatGPT like system. But for example, if you wanted to predict seismic imaging, or if you wanted to predict things that are related to industrial equipment failure, those data sets are not just scrapable off the internet, and they're generally coming off of multi-million dollar, multi-billion dollar assets that some companies own. And so you can't just tap into that data and get that data.
Nor will they share it.
Nor will they share it. And in fact, there's a big backlash towards cloud applications of technologies like these. Because what's happening now is these large companies don't want to take their data and put them into a cloud that somebody else owns and controls, because that data is everything for them. So what we've been able to do, John, is we've been able to bring the sophistication of a lot of these AI platforms and technologies, but take them to our customer. Give them the comfort that their data is their own. The models built off of their data will stay their own. And secondly, on our end, we are building foundational models for industrials. We are spending the time and the money and obviously our resources in putting together across the verticals that we serve foundation models that add value to our customer right off the gate. One big example of this is an industrial vision model, which is available to our customers right now, where you can plug in with your cameras, your CCTV, your warehouse, your manufacturing, etc. And we immediately start to deliver value on use cases without the customer having to give us any data at all. So you honor the customer's data and the customer's trust. Don't try and make money off of what's theirs, but invest on your own to build foundational models that can then add value to all your customers, and focus on the best algorithms that can be deployed locally so that the customer knows exactly where all the computation and all the data is. These three things, I think, are basics. There's a lot on top of this, but these are the basics, and we believe in them because we believe in building trust with our customers over 10, 20, 50, 100 years. That's the kind of company we want to be.
You know, what's interesting, this is a very important takeaway for our JC2 portfolio, but for others that are watching on this, is you outlined a vision of where industrial AI could go. You then said, here's how you think about it in a given industry. Let's use the energy as an example. Here are some key reference areas where it could be done. But what you also said, you've got to be able to land and expand. You've got to be able to hit early results, whether it's by the cameras or early ways of addressing terrain where the oil might be resident within that. And so that's a key takeaway as well. When you begin to think about the value you bring to enterprise companies, you've got to say, how do you do this a step at a time? Because most people won't be able to take the full jump, nor is the data in a format that they can take the full jump on it.
Yeah.
I'm going to switch directions now. One of the things that you've done better than any of my other startups is you built an amazing cadre of a very powerful board members that are well known in the industry, but also advisors. And I think what many people don't realize, it isn't about getting names where you check the box and say, look how good they are. It's how you leverage their skill sets. How do you learn from them? How do you also remind them they're board members, they're not part of the management team, to tell you what to do? But could you just share the people that you put into those two categories, and then teach all of us about how you use them effectively in terms of helping you lead Spark Cognition for the future?
Sure, John, we've been very, very blessed. I mean, obviously, you are a tremendous advisor and a partner, and have been now for 6-7 years for me. But we also have, as chairman of our board, Lord John Brown, who used to be the chairman and CEO of BP. He now runs an alternate energy fund, a multi-billion-dollar fund. He's also on the Royal Science Advisory Board for the King in the UK. Then John Thornton, who used to be president of Goldman Sachs.
Yeah,
Exactly.
really
You
good guy.
know him, yeah,
Very well.
absolutely. And of course, he also is currently chairman of the world's largest mining company, Barrick Gold. He's been a professor. He's been, Chairman Emeritus at Brookings. Lots of amazing things that he's done in his life. Currently co-chair of the Asia Society. So he is very close, a mentor, a friend, a real partner, and somebody that's made a real difference. Then on the venture side, we've also got Sumant Mandal from March Capital. Sumant has been a tremendous partner, and
Yeah, he's really good.
He's very good,
yeah.
Honestly. And he is an atypical investor in the sense that and any entrepreneur would see him as a real partner. He's bringing, relationships. He's ideating with you about how you're thinking about the next raise. And he's really, I think, arguing the company's case. So I've really valued him. Then, of course, Pankaj, your partner, Pankaj from Cisco, he's been tremendous. On the military side, we are very lucky. So Secretary Bob Work, who was the Deputy Secretary of Defense for us, he is the chairman of our government business. And Admiral John Richardson, who was the chief of our Navy, the CNO of our Navy, he's on our board as well. He's also on the board of Boeing. So tremendous group of people. Lisa Dispro, our Assistant Secretary of the Air Force, she's on our board. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's been I can go on, but the point here is it's relationships. Each one of these people, John, the real thing is when you're cultivating a relationship, how can you be useful? It's just the very basic tenets that, mom tells you when you're growing up, which is how can you be useful to somebody? And I think that there's a great push to being extremely transactional, which doesn't allow you to, it might allow you to do something in the near term once, but it doesn't really allow you to build a relationship with which over time you can do something great. So I value all these people in my life greatly. They're all not just names, they're real partners and helpers who
and you learned how to help lead them, how to use them, etc. Because it's almost intimidating to many people when you have a board like that or advisors, and then how to maximize it. What are tying this all together now? You've got an amazing board, amazing group of advisors. You have a vision that I think is very unique in the industry. You had it for 9 years, not in the last 6 months when everybody got excited, and you've implemented. What are the things that Spark Cognition has to do well over the next 3 years to position your company for where you want to be in the future? And this isn't a question about Spark Cognition. This is a question what every company needs to do with the changes that are going in AI, the economy, the availability of capital. What are the key elements for you?
So, John, the basics, the way I lay them out is this. Our opportunity is there's $100 trillion worth of installed infrastructure in the world, and we want to be the number one company providing the AI-powered operating system that wraps around this infrastructure, makes it operate in a way that's carbon neutral, increases its efficiency, improves its cyber defense, and on and on and on. So if we're going to be that, we have to touch $100 trillion worth of infrastructure. Now, where are we in our journey towards that? Very early on. However, the important thing is that we can't imagine touching all this infrastructure directly. Partners are very important to us. So a Boeing is very important to us. BP is very important to us. The US DoD is very important to us because these guys are the owners of all that infrastructure. So over the next 2 to 3 years, what we have to do is we have to go identify deepening our relationships with these partners so we touch more and more of the assets globally. And within some new areas that we focused on, for example, renewables, create similar partnerships. over the next 3 to 5 years, Spark Cognition is past the point where we've demonstrated value. We've demonstrated value for our customers. We're getting into large deals, etc. Now we have to do the strategic play, the real purpose for which this company was built, to be a long-running, real company in this space and to really revolutionize infrastructure in the world. We are also, John, at this stage, by the end of this year, we would have achieved a bookings and revenue traction, which would make us the largest private industrial AI company, period. So we are
number one and number two, Jack Welch rule number one for him, or don't compete.
Yeah, and so we're in a category of one, and we've got a lot of great things that are in our past, but what we've got to really focus on is keep the eye on the ball. And when I look at it that way, we have so much further to go, right? We're at the beginning of our journey. Partnerships will be very key for us. Will be very key for us, because I don't want this, there's a lot of fashionable discussion around disruption. Sometimes people take that as a negative word. I think disruption is important as long as you do it with partners and partners see it the same way, because the physical infrastructure of the world can't be ripped and replaced. You can't have a physical disruption of, the trains and the planes and the automobiles. We have to bring the system in a way through partners. And that, I think, will be one of the reasons why Spark Cognition will succeed. Good partnerships.
It's exciting. I'm going to end on that question because I think you summarized things extremely well. I hope the audience has found this very useful in terms of the trade-offs. We started with, today was all about how do you translate a vision into strategy? How do you determine the key planks to accomplish that? What role does culture play within it? How do you hit perhaps the biggest transition that's ever occurred in technology with AI? And how do you really implement that across the board? And how do you differentiate what are your sustainable differences as a company and your strategy in terms of implementation? And I've learned a lot. I'm going to go take some notes afterwards and put it down in there. But I want to thank everybody for joining us and give us your candid feedback on what did you think today. Amir, it's an honor being your partner.
Thank you so much. Thank you, John.